Hello, friends. The 797 days of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. In the Kupiansk section of the Kharkiv direction, today the enemy advanced in the eastern part of Kislivka along Zelina Street and further south to a depth of 250 meters. The Russians continue active assault operations, reserves are brought in, but the enemy's successes clearly do not correspond to the stated expectations. Siersky's statement about the liberation of Nestriga Island in the Kherson region was premature, writes the Ukrainian military telegram channel Deep State. The one who reported successes in that area caused trouble, since the operation was not completed, and in the morning mass shelling of the island, and attempts by landing forces to occupy part of it began, the telegram channel reports. According to him, the situation on the island has worsened. He called for punishing the headquarters who are in a hurry to curry favor and put human lives below their career ambitions. The most difficult situation remains in the Ocheretyne region, where the Russians are trying to build on their success. To the west and northwest of Ocheretyne, the enemy advanced along the railway and forest belts in an area up to 1.75 kilometers wide and to a depth of 1.15 kilometers. The advance of Russian troops in the eastern and central parts of Novo Kalinovi and in the southern part of Karamik is also recorded in an area up to 2.75 kilometers wide and to a depth of 1.52 kilometers. Let's think about the consequences of an enemy breakthrough near Ocheretyne. The Ukrainian defense crisis near Ocheretyne has been going on for more than a week now. This settlement, located at a commanding height, is virtually completely captured by the Russian army. According to unconfirmed reports, one of the brigades left their positions without orders, which led to the collapse of the front. The breakthrough was so fast and deep that the Ukrainian armed forces still cannot stabilize the situation and the Russians continue to advance. Now their main blow falls to the northwest, towards Pokrovsk, the largest city in the west of the Donetsk region. The main problem for the Ukrainian armed forces with this breakthrough is that it takes Russian troops behind the lines of fortifications that Ukrainian troops began to build after the loss of Avdiivka. To the rear, where there are no continuous lines of trenches or minefields. And therefore, there the Russians, with sufficient reserves and fire support, can advance quite quickly by the standards of the current trench warfare, destroying the logistics of the Ukrainian armed forces and posing a threat of encirclement to Ukrainian units on a huge section of the front in the Donetsk region. Naturally, this movement in any case will not be an instant forced march like the capture of Berdyansk, Melitopol, and Kherson at the beginning of the invasion. Russian troops will need to spend time expanding and strengthening their flanks in order to avoid the threat of encirclement by units that have become far ahead of their rear. But the possible directions for further advance of the Russian army, if it is not stopped in the near future by the armed forces of Ukraine, are already obvious. The Russians have several options for developing their offensive. The first is to continue moving towards Pokrovsk in order to reach the borders of the Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions, and then launch an offensive towards Pavlograd, Sinelnikovi and Dnipro, at the same time creating a threat to the flanks of the southern front of the Ukrainian armed forces. The second is to turn south, bypassing the rear of the Ukrainian army's defense lines along the reservoirs southwest of Avdiivka, with the goal of reaching Ukrainsk, Gernyak and Kurahovi, creating a threat of encirclement for the Ukrainian troops stationed near Donetsk, forcing them to retreat. The third is to make the main direction of movement to the north, towards Konstantinivka, in order to create a threat of encirclement of Ukrainian troops in the area of Toretsk and New York near Gorlivka. The fourth option is to move in all three directions at the same time, feeling for weak points in the defense. But it all comes down to the question of whether Russia has the reserves necessary for such large-scale offensive plans. and also the presence of reserves in the Ukrainian armed forces to stop the breakthrough. Both factors are an unknown variable, and in general the further course of events will depend on them. If the Ukrainian armed forces have enough reserves, then, for sure, the command will make every effort to stop the breakthrough in the very near future, stabilize the defense and prevent further advance of Russian forces to the rear of the Ukrainian army, creating a new stable front line. If the Ukrainian armed forces have a problem with reserves, then the question will arise about the need to repeat the same maneuver that Russian troops were forced to undertake for the same reason of lack of reserves after the breakthrough of the Ukrainian army in the Kharkiv region in September 2022 and organize a large-scale retreat to new lines of defense to avoid encirclement, and also gain time to intensify mobilization within the country and receive weapons from partners. The question is where this new line of defense will go, and how long will it take to transform it into a continuous line of fortified areas protected by minefields. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.